G'day mate, it's me, Willie, the Tapwise Owl. Down under, we've got a cheeky little game called 2 Facts and a Fib. Reckon you can spot the porky? Number 1. Before hitting record, Andrew swore blind that this was a ripper idea and that my true blue Aussie accent would be a smash hit with all you crafty beer professionals on the YouTubes. Number 2. Tapwise makes it dead easy to run your beer club and bring your mates back to the bar with your very own branded brewery app. Monthly subs are a breeze, perks and rewards tick along on autopilot, and the cash lands in your bank account every night, you business legend. Number 3. In the past year, breweries have pulled in nearly 100,000 extra chatroom visits and raked in over $1 million in recurring revenue with apps of their own. Got the fib? Right, mate. Andrew reckoned this was a bugger idea, but joke's on him. I went and did it anyway. So book a demo today and let's show Andrew you're keen on packed taprooms, steady revenue, and of course me, Willie, the Tapwise Owl. Cheers, Cobber. Now enough chin wag. Let's get on to the learny bit.
Hello, everyone, and good morning. Almost forgot to unmute myself. Appreciate you all coming by and super excited to be here. My name is Ricky. I am with the Perfectly Dosed team, and today we are going to be talking about hemp beverages, specifically adding THC drinks to the menu for breweries ranging from very small barrelage to some of the larger folks, finding out kind of what works for you. So digging into that, little bit of background on what we're going to cover today. I will start very high level talking about how this market works, what we're seeing in the market, and then kind of breaking it down into some more tangible stuff that should ideally be pretty workable for your use case. Talking about the COGS and the ROI, trying to kind of think through what it would look like to determine if a hemp beverage is a good fit for your brewery and how to get there. So without further ado, I'll introduce myself a little bit better. Like I said, my name is Ricky. I am the revenue director at Perfectly Dosed. Perfectly Dosed is a hemp emulsion company. We manufacture the hemp, THC, and CBD ingredients that power over 1 billion servings in the market at this point. Our job is literally to take hemp inputs, whether that's THC or CBD, which are in oil form, and turn them into a water-compatible ingredient that's super easy for you to use. I've been with the company almost 1.5 years now, and in that time, I have helped over 100 breweries launch a hemp beverage. Some of those partners have seen over 10% net new revenue in less than a year of them launching those products. And as I previously mentioned, the range of folks that Perfectly Dosed has experience working with are some smaller folks who aren't necessarily distributing broader than their local communities to some of the larger craft breweries in the space and beyond. So digging into hemp beverages specifically and kind of what we're even talking about here. Not sure if you're familiar with any of these brands that you're seeing on the right-hand side of the slide, but it's pretty simple, really. We are talking about drinks that are infused with hemp-derived cannabinoids. Those cannabinoids can include a range of things, including THC, CBD, as well as a few of these other interesting minor cannabinoids like CBG and CBN. Those are maybe a little less common, but definitely growing in popularity and an interesting way to kind of tweak your beverages in terms of what is had out on the market. Obviously, all of the pictures that I'm showing here are canned RTDs, but there's a range of different ways to do that as well. The beauty of these products is there's hardly any limit really to what is possible. You're adding a water dispersible ingredient to some beverage base, which could be soda, it could be seltzer, it could be a hop water. These are non-alcoholic beverages. That's the main difference between obviously beer and making a THC beverage. But aside from that, you have tons of flexibility to introduce something interesting that you think your consumers would like in the tap room. And obviously different benefits to doing each of those. The Perfectly Dosed team is kind of here to help and talk through what those options would look like and how to assess what works. What I've seen a lot of breweries do is those folks who have maybe made a seltzer or a hop water before, it's a really easy way to kind of modify that ingredient formula and just start adding THC to it as opposed to alcohol, and learn pretty quickly by launching a beverage in the market. I'm sure a burning question for many folks is, how is this even legal? If we're talking about THC beverages, how are we selling them in our tap rooms or to distributors to be sold at liquor stores or elsewhere if it's not going through a dispensary channel? And the answer is the fact that it's hemp and not marijuana. Let me kind of precursor this slide by saying this is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. I obviously work in the industry, so I understand things pretty well. But obviously, always encourage you to speak with your own legal counsel. That said, the key differentiation here, like I said, is between hemp and marijuana. Both of these plants are considered the cannabis plant. The key differentiator is the amount of THC that there is by dry weight in the plant. So if you were to cultivate a hemp plant and test the total THC content in that plant, it would fall under 0.3% THC. If it's more than 0.3% THC, it is considered marijuana. At a federal level, hemp is legal. By the 2018 Farm Bill, hemp was removed from the Controlled Substances Act, and therefore hemp and hemp-derived products can be sold nationally. Now, there are some different regulations on a state-by-state level that you should be familiar with, depending on what market you sit in and would want to distribute in. But at a federal level, hemp is legal versus marijuana at a federal level is illegal. Obviously, there are certain states where it's possible, but we at Perfectly Dosed are working with hemp inputs only. And that is what is making this market possible for brewers to get into and distribute outside of dispensary channels. Now, like I said, the key thing to remember here is that each state and possibly even municipality will have their own specific regulations and ways to do this safely, to bring a product to market. So you'll want to make sure that you speak with your lawyer and check in on those things. Diving into kind of what's the big deal? Why are we even talking about this? We're obviously at the CBP presentation. We should be talking about beer. But the fact of the matter is that we're seeing this market grow pretty significantly. Some interesting stats I have up here on the slide, but kind of at a high level, we're seeing THC drinks. The sales are doubling annually with a very large market cap at the moment of over 2 billion at this point. And we're seeing trends of consumers really enjoying to indulge in cannabis. That's not to say that they don't consume alcohol anymore, but it is to say that they are kind of diversifying their consumption habits, where I guess the way that I personally think about it is to say that there is still plenty of folks drinking beer. I think we've all seen the data to suggest that maybe beer is not the most rapidly growing market right now. And this is an opportunity to continue to sell beer on maybe a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, but to make up a greater proportion of your consumer's fridge on the other nights of the week, where folks who already enjoy beer might be looking for a different product to add to the mix, and they will trust the brewery that they know and love to maybe try a THC beverage and get into that space. A little bit more market size data here. Keep in mind that this is a very nascent industry. There's not a lot of hard and fast data here, but I pulled some numbers based on some of the 22 leading hemp THC beverage brands that we work with, selling across 42 different states. Again, this is directional, but based on those estimates, in 2025, we're already seeing over 700,000 cases sold into those 42 states. That, as of August, already exceeds the 2024 numbers. So seeing really substantial growth, especially from that 2023 number, which sat right around 100,000 cases. Obviously, these brands are not necessarily breweries or backed by breweries. They are truly focused only in the THC brand space, and would therefore likely be distributing across broader markets. But all to say that the market cap here is definitely growing and very significant. Speaking of growth, digging into those numbers a little bit more, I broke it down into the monthly volumes, where we're seeing over 85,000 cases sold per month, based on that 2025 data for those same 22 brands. That represents over 75% growth from 2024 to 2025. So again, very healthy growth and very healthy market cap in this THC beverage market. Breaking it down a little bit more regionally, as I previously mentioned, understanding hemp and THC beverages is, from a regulatory perspective, very important to understand which states you're distributing into. And so with that in mind, there are a handful of key states that kind of make up the largest proportion of the market, at least based on the data that I had collected. Minnesota being the first one. Minnesota is considered the pioneer state for these beverages. They have the most robust regulatory framework in place at the moment. And this is kind of the birthplace of THC drinks. I don't remember the exact number, but I believe over 75% of breweries in the state of Minnesota now have a THC drink on their menu. And we're seeing those trends really expand to a lot of other states. New Jersey being the second following state, South Carolina, Florida, Texas. Generally speaking, we're seeing the Southeast markets performing really strong. That would include North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida. And we're also seeing a very strong market in the Midwest. In Illinois, in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, obviously, we're starting to see the Northeast grow as well. Again, this is highly dependent on kind of where the market is on the adoption curve, as well as where the market sits from a regulatory perspective. It's going to be somewhat specific to wherever your brewery sits. But if you have any questions, please reach out to the Perfectly Dosed team. We can kind of talk you through market dynamics for where you sit specifically. So diving into the product economics a little bit more and kind of wrapping our minds as into whether it makes sense for your brewery to make THC drinks. I wanted to kind of look at a bit of a case study and put some dollars and cents to these figures. The image on the left here is Perfectly Dosed smallest product size. It's a liter or a kilogram in net weight, and it contains 50 grams or 50,000 milligrams of either active THC or active CBD. Now, it's an important distinction here when we're talking about net weight versus active weight. Our product is a liquid ingredient, and not 100% of that liquid is THC or CBD. It has to be suspended in liquid, and obviously there are other ingredients in there as well. And Perfectly Dosed has a 5% potency formula, meaning that for every gram of emulsion you weigh out on a scale, there's actually 50 milligrams of either THC or CBD in that product. To put these two product sizes in perspective, with that 50,000 milligrams, if you're doing a 10 milligram serving, you could do about 15 barrels with one of these products. If you're doing a 5 milligram per 12 ounce serving, you could do about 30 barrels. So great for pilot scale or even production scale for some breweries to kind of get in the market. All of this kind of on the THC side of things comes in at $450. For CBD comes in at $375. So not to say, I guess to put that in perspective, it's to say that the emulsion itself is designed to be very easy to use and very cost effective for any brewery to get into the market. You're looking at 0.9 to 0.7 of a cent per milligram of THC or CBD. With that in mind, you obviously have other costs going into these products. You have your cans, you have your flavors and preservatives, labor, all of these sorts of things. And I figured it would be helpful to kind of break down unit economics from the case cost all the way to the retail pricing. COGS, based on my rough math, would be about $10 to $20 per case, whereas the price to the retailers for that same case would be $80 to $100. So gross margin of 50 to 70%. Really, the takeaway here is to say that hemp beverages are a pretty profitable and high margin product for breweries specifically. There's no real need to invest in new infrastructure to make these products, and the tank time is significantly reduced compared to that of beer. And all of the ingredients going into these products is relatively affordable. Again, this is not to say that these products are going to replace beer. People still know and love craft beer, but sometimes they're looking for something a little bit different. This is a great opportunity for breweries to augment and supplement their revenue streams. And again, fairly easy project to take on, boosting revenue so that you can continue to make the delicious and wonderful beers that you all do make. I wanted to put some more context kind of behind these numbers and what this looks like by sharing a case study. This is, you can see picture on the right here is a product called Choom. Choom is made by a brewery based in Chicago, Hopewell Brewing, and they make a terrific line of THC beverages. They launched just over a year ago, probably a year and a half ago, and the story went like this. We essentially met with their team, got an understanding that this was something they were interested in doing. We kind of talked at a very high conceptual level what the vision was for the brand, the products that they wanted to bring to market, the budget, and the timeline. And from there, we got to work. We gave them some samples so that they could begin formulating some benchtop stuff and then some pilot scale stuff to make sure that all of the ingredients were compatible. The product was tasting the way they wanted to and presenting the way they wanted it to. And then eventually launched into production. Their first production batch, if I remember correctly, was about 30 barrels. They are now significantly larger than that. And in the past year and a half, they have this is one of those case studies that I was mentioning where they've grown to be, their THC products have grown to be over 10% net new revenue for them. The Choom line has allowed them to really grow their THC beverage operations, but also pump some cash back into the brewing operations. They have gotten into co-packing for THC beverages, and it overall has been a terrific case study in them diversifying their business, protecting the core beer business while also growing a new revenue stream, and really prepping some forward-thinking growth on that level. So now you might be thinking, okay, this all sounds terrific. What is it that I do in terms of next steps to actually execute on this for my brewery? I would consider ourselves right now at the discovery stage, point one there. We're getting an understanding of the market, how all of this stuff works, whether or not it could be a good fit for your brewery, and all of the kind of bits and bobs that you would need to consider before setting down this roadmap. The next step would be actually creating the product. Like I said, breweries are in a unique position because they have the existing infrastructure and knowledge to make these beverages very quickly and very effectively. And so the next step is really just developing the brand and the products to go along with it. After that, obviously building out your cost model, getting prepped for go-to-market. This would also include things like developing your label, making sure all of your packaging is compatible and ready, as well as talking to distributors and other stakeholders you might need to speak with. And then obviously you would launch. Perfectly Dosed is a partner throughout all of these, where I'll be honest and say our philosophy is very much when the folks that we work with win, we win. We want to see this market grow, and we do whatever we can to offer support. I won't lie and say it is a very nascent industry, and therefore there might be some challenges along the way. Sometimes ingredients aren't compatible. Sometimes the can liner isn't the one that you expect it to be. Whatever it is, we likely have seen it before, and if we haven't, we want to be there to help make sure that it does work. A big part of this market growing is the entire industry upskilling, getting smarter and working together, and we are 100% here for that. So with that, I wanted to kind of talk through what it looks like to actually implement a sample batch or a production batch, some best practices to it to make sure that you would be successful, and some common challenges we have seen to avoid those pitfalls in the future. When it comes to the sample batch, essentially we would send out a small vial of our THC and CBD emulsions for you to try. You would formulate some base beverage to go along with that. Again, this has to be a non-alcoholic based beverage, but it could range from anything from a lemonade to a sweet tea to a simple seltzer or hop water. The sky's the limit here, aside from adding alcohol to the product. Once you have your base formula all mixed up, you would measure out the correct amount of emulsion that you need, depending on the dosage rate that you want to hit, as well as your batch size. We have calculators to make all of that easy. And At a benchtop scale, you're literally going to mix that with a spoon or some other circulation tool. Let it sit for a couple of seconds and give it a try. The emulsion is designed, like I said, in water format or in a liquid-based format, and is therefore very easily dispersed into whatever beverage you're using. It's also going to remain extremely stable in that beverage, meaning that you're not going to have the oil separate from the water. You don't need to have a shake well before consuming label on your can. It truly is designed so that the first sip of your beverage has the exact same effects as the last sip of your beverage. With that, if you were to go into a larger scale, either pilot or production batch, steps are extremely similar. We're going to make sure to add the emulsion last, to make your entire base beverage, mix it up in your tank, weigh out the correct amount of emulsion that you need, and dose the tank. Now, Perfectly Dosed always recommends that, at least for your first few batches, while you're getting your process dialed in, that you run a quick potency test on your tank while the liquid is sitting in there. Obviously, once the product goes into cans, there's not a lot that we can do to change the potency of the liquid that's in there. But if we do test the tank beforehand by sending a small sample off to a lab to read the amount of THC and or CBD that's in the product, you can make sure you're hitting your marks before it goes into the cans. Happy to answer any questions specific to sampling and production. But for now, I will jump to some tips for success. I mentioned that things won't always go perfectly. We have run into headwinds before, but the fortunate thing is we know how to solve for those things and can kind of advise on what to do and what not to do before you even go into production. So I called out 6 of the more common issues that I've seen in the past, and kind of what to do to avoid them. The first one here being incompatible ingredients. Our emulsion is quite literally a series of tiny oil droplets that have been broken down to a nanometer size particle, encapsulated in a simple carbohydrate shell. And then each of those small oil droplets has a negative charge to it that causes them to want to repel away from each other. This is basically what is being mixed into your base beverage and therefore remaining in suspension in that base beverage. Now, if you introduce incompatible ingredients to that mixture, something like a fruit puree that has particulate matter, it's very likely that your emulsion is going to adhere to that particulate matter and settle either to the bottom of your tank or to the bottom of your can, causing your potency readings not to come in as expected, because obviously your THC and or CBD has settled to the bottom of your tank, can, or whatever you end up packaging in. With that in mind, pH is another important consideration. We recommend that pH is above 3 if possible. 2.8 is manageable in most contexts. Again, like I said, our emulsion is made up of very small oil droplets, each with negative charges. If the pH of the beverage is too acidic, it can change kind of that polarity of the oil droplets, cause them to clump together, rendering the emulsion less effective. These are all things that the Perfectly Dosed R&D team can support with, but best to kind of hit these marks as you're formulating and before you go into production. Another big point that I wanted to talk about is food safety. Unlike beer, we don't have any alcohol in these products to kill any sort of growth. So we want to make sure that we are doing whatever we can to make sure these are food safe products for all of your consumers. It's quite likely that not a lot of breweries will have pasteurizers. If you do have a pasteurizer, emulsion works fine with pasteurization. If you don't, preservatives are a great option. We've tested our emulsion with basically all major preservatives and have not seen any issues. Sodium benzoate, potassium sorbate tend to be very popular. And as you will likely be working with a third-party lab anyways to get your product tested for potency, those same labs will very likely offer food safety tests that you can run as well. And Perfectly Dosed highly recommends that you share all of this information with your consumer via a QR code on your can. This way they can scan the QR code, take a look at your potency results to make sure that if they think they're ingesting 5 milligrams, it's been tested to show that it truly is 5 milligrams in that can, as well as the fact that it is a food safe product for them to consume. Already touched on pH, but again, that's going to be an important one, especially if you're adding citric acid or any other sort of thing that might modify the pH of your beverage. When it comes to kind of some of those more production related issues, I wanted to reaffirm the fact that adding the emulsion last is extremely important here. We want to try to introduce the emulsion to as neutral a base as possible, which means that if you're making a lemonade and you have some lemon flavoring throw that's in very high potency intended to be diluted in with water, and you add the emulsion directly to that throw as opposed to directly to the water, obviously the pH is going to be much lower to that lemonade mix, and all of your ingredients generally are going to be a lot more saturated and amplified. So in order to avoid any ingredient incompatibility or just general environment incompatibility, we recommend that you make essentially the entire base beverage first, add the emulsion last, and turn the tank over a few times to make sure that everything is mixed in there all nice. Another major challenge we've seen in the past is incompatible can liners. The can liners, as most folks know, is basically a lining that's sprayed on the inside of the can. That lining is somewhat imperfect, has some pores to it, and those pores can cause the emulsion to stick to the can liner. And that's called scalping. And so essentially, if your THC or CBD is scalped into your can liner, it's obviously no longer in the beverage base, it is in your can liner, and your test results will show that to be true. If you were targeting 5 milligrams and you're using the wrong can liner, it's quite likely that your beverage might come in testing around 3 milligrams as opposed to the expected 5. So we recommend using the Valpure V70 Q11 or the Q38 series liners. We've tested them pretty extensively with our emulsion. And we found that the PPG Gen 1 and Gen 2, as well as the Axo Nobel Gen 1 and 2, as well as epoxy liners are incompatible, or at least less compatible. If you have any questions about this, please do reach out. We want to make sure that you're putting it into a compatible product packaging format so that your beverage is successful. Moving now to the right hand of the slide, dissolved oxygen. Oxygen is going to degrade THC specifically over time. So if your emulsion is exposed to oxygen for too long, you could expect that THC to lose potency over time. Obviously, brewers tend to have a very good idea of how to minimize DO in their tanks, but calling it out here to make sure that it's something that remains top of mind, we recommend targeting a DO level of less than 50 parts per billion. That is all that I have for everyone here today. I wanted to pull up this last slide so that you have an email and a phone number as well as our website in case you do have any questions. Apologies, it's somewhat smaller text, but shoot us an email at hello@perfectlydosed.com or call our office. Would be happy to answer any questions. I tried to keep this somewhat general so that everyone can kind of get a taste of what it is they need, but obviously happy to tailor any conversation to the specific needs of your brewery. Again, reiterating that hemp beverages are something that we're seeing grow pretty rapidly. Not something that is going to replace beer, but definitely a huge opportunity to diversify your revenue streams, bring new folks into your tap room, as well as kind of diversify the wallet share for the existing folks who love drinking your beers already. Perfectly Dosed team is here to help with all of it. Please shoot us an email. We'd be happy to set you up some samples, get on the phone and talk about what works best for you. Appreciate everyone stopping by today. Looking forward to chatting soon.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this session, we'd love to see you in real life. We host in-person workshops across the country for craft beer professionals just like you that are held in some of the most exciting beer destinations around. These immersive events are designed to help you grow and connect with others. You'll meet peers from across the country and leave with actionable strategies for success. Connection has never been more important, and you can learn more at cbpconnects.com. Cheers. See you there.